So picture this. It's February 19th, 2026, and King Charles III is sitting somewhere in Buckingham Palace watching his entire family legacy potentially crumble in real time because his brother just became the first senior British royal in almost 400 years to get arrested. And honestly, if you think your family drama is complicated, just wait until you hear what's happening inside the walls of the most famous monarchy on Earth right now. According to reports from multiple sources, former Prince Andrew, now stripped down to just Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, was arrested on his 66th birthday on suspicion of misconduct in public office. And the timing couldn't be worse for King Charles, who's already battling cancer and trying to modernize an institution that's hemorrhaging public support faster than you can say, "God save the king." But here's where it gets absolutely wild. Sources claim that Andrew believes his own brother, the king himself, actually sacrificed him to protect the monarchy, like some kind of calculated chess move where the pawn gets thrown under the bus to save the queen. Except in this case, it's literally a prince getting thrown under the bus to save the crown. And I've got to say, if that's true, that's some seriously cold-blooded family dynamics right there. Now let me break down what actually happened, because this isn't just some tabloid gossip. This is a full-blown crisis that has experts saying the monarchy is in deeper trouble than it's been since Princess Diana's death, which is saying something considering how badly the royal family fumbled that situation back in 1997. So Thames Valley Police showed up at Andrew's residence on the Sandringham estate with about 20 officers in unmarked cars who drove 130 miles from London in what was described as a top-secret operation. And they arrested him on allegations that he shared confidential government trade documents with convicted offender Jeffrey Epstein back in 2010, when Andrew was serving as Britain's special trade envoy. And the documents that came out from the U.S. Department of Justice reportedly show emails from someone labeled the Duke, forwarding confidential briefings to Epstein, which, if proven true, would be absolutely devastating because we're talking about potential breaches of national security here, not just embarrassing personal scandals. Here's what makes this situation so incredibly complicated, though. Andrew spent 11 hours being interrogated at Aylsham police station. He had his mugshot taken, was swabbed for DNA, got one phone call, and then was released under investigation, which in British law means he's neither charged nor cleared. He's just stuck in this legal limbo while multiple police forces, and sources say there are now 11 different police departments investigating various aspects of his conduct, are building their cases, and meanwhile the entire world is watching to see if King Charles can actually protect the monarchy's reputation, or if this is the beginning of the end for the British royal family as we know it. Now, according to insiders close to the king, and I want to emphasize this is according to reports, because obviously we're not sitting in on royal family meetings, Charles is described as being deeply troubled and distressed by these revelations. One source told the Daily Mail that the king believes Prince Andrew's behavior has brought significant shame upon the monarchy. He's deeply distressed by the whole situation, not just for the implications it has for his brother, but for the potential damage to the institution he now leads. And honestly, can you imagine being in that position where you have to choose between your own brother and the survival of a 1,000-year-old institution that employs thousands of people and represents national identity for millions? But here's where the story takes an even more interesting turn, because sources claim that when the pressure first started mounting around Andrew, King Charles actually hesitated. One senior palace source told reporters that Charles dithered, he stalled, he made excuses, and he worried far more about Andrew's feelings than the monarchy's image, which, if true, shows that even kings struggle with the same family loyalty versus duty conflicts that the rest of us face. Except most of us don't have our family drama playing out on the world stage, with the future of a constitutional monarchy hanging in the balance. Enter Prince William, and this is where it gets fascinating from a generational perspective. Multiple reports suggest that William, who's the heir to the throne and increasingly seen as a modernizing force within the royal family, was the one pushing his father to take decisive action. Royal author Russell Myers claims that William warned both King Charles and the late Queen Elizabeth before she passed away that Andrew should be removed from the institution, with William reportedly saying, "This is existential. The monarchy is at stake." And honestly, I think William's got a point here because when you look at the polling data, it's genuinely concerning for the royals. Paul Burrell, who was Princess Diana's butler for 10 years and knows the inner workings of the palace better than most, went on Piers Morgan's show and dropped a bombshell. He said that the latest polls show only 51% of the United Kingdom supports the monarchy, and he emphasized, "That's pretty low. We've never been as low as that." Which means nearly half the country is either neutral or actively wants to abolish the whole system. And that's before we even get to the younger generation, who are increasingly skeptical of hereditary privilege and unelected power structures. So what are King Charles's options here? And why is this such an impossible situation? Well, experts in royal protocol point out that the king faces what they call a near-impossible dilemma. Any attempt to formally discipline Andrew further, who's now technically a private citizen after being stripped of his titles, would be unprecedented and could fracture family relations even more. But allowing the situation to fester could erode public confidence and give ammunition to anti-royalist factions who are already having a field day with this. In fact, Graham Smith, the CEO of Republic, which is an anti-monarchy organization, said he honestly didn't think he'd see the day a senior royal got arrested, calling it a gift from heaven for their cause and saying the monarchy appears to be in deep, deep trouble. And from their perspective, they're absolutely right. This is the kind of crisis that could accelerate the decline of public support for the institution. Now here's the part that really shows you how dramatic this situation has become. According to reports, Andrew himself is privately seething and believes he's been made a scapegoat. Sources describe his mindset as combative, with allies claiming he refuses to accept being the royal scapegoat, and there's even speculation, which is absolutely terrifying for the palace, that he could potentially reveal sensitive information if pushed too far, which adds this whole other layer of uncertainty because what exactly does Andrew know? And what might he be willing to share if he feels betrayed enough by his own family? That's the kind of thing that keeps palace advisors up at night, I'm sure. Meanwhile, the optics just keep getting worse. Photographers captured Andrew looking visibly shaken and terrified as he left the police station, and that photo ended up being displayed in the Louvre Museum in Paris by activists with the caption, "He's sweating now, 2026," which is a reference to his disastrous BBC interview back in 2019, where he claimed he couldn't have been at a nightclub because he had a medical condition that prevented him from sweating. A claim that was widely mocked and disbelieved, and Andrew apparently thinks that photo from his arrest was no coincidence, believing the press had been tipped off, potentially by palace insiders trying to control the narrative, which brings us back to this idea that King Charles sacrificed him. Let's talk about what King Charles has actually done, because to be fair to the king, he has taken some significant steps. He issued a statement after Andrew's arrest saying he learned the news with deepest concern, and that the law must take its course, which was a pretty strong departure from the old royal motto of never complain, never explain. Then in late February, he moved to formally strip Andrew of all his titles and honors, including the title of prince that he'd held since birth. Forced him out of the 30-room Royal Lodge mansion he'd been living in rent-free, cut his annual personal allowance and security funding, and basically said you're on your own, which is probably the most decisive action any British monarch has taken against a family member in modern times. But critics argue it was too little, too late, and that the palace has been consistently one step behind instead of getting ahead of the crisis. The generational divide within the royal family is really interesting here. You've got King Charles, who's 77 years old, dealing with cancer, trying to balance family loyalty with institutional duty. And he's from a generation where you protect your family no matter what. Then you've got Prince William, who's in his 40s, looking at polling data and thinking about the long-term survival of the institution he's going to inherit, and he's apparently much more willing to make hard, calculated decisions. One source put it perfectly saying, Charles feels, William calculates. In this case, calculation saved the crown for the moment. And I think that really captures the tension between emotional family bonds and cold strategic thinking. Here's what really strikes me about this whole situation, and this is just my personal take, but I think we're witnessing a fundamental shift in how monarchies can function in the 21st century. The old model where royal families could operate with complete opacity and just expect the public to respect them because of bloodline and tradition. That's dead. It's finished. Modern societies demand transparency and accountability from their institutions, and the monarchy is no exception. Which means King Charles has to thread this incredibly difficult needle, where he's transparent enough to maintain public trust, but not so transparent that he exposes the institution to existential threats. And honestly, I'm not sure it's possible to do both at the same time. The stakes couldn't be higher, though, because if the monarchy loses public support in the UK, we're not just talking about some symbolic change. We're talking about the potential dissolution of a constitutional arrangement that's been in place for centuries, the end of the Commonwealth as we know it, massive constitutional upheaval, questions about what happens to all the crown properties and wealth. It's genuinely transformative stuff, and Prince William seems to understand that better than anyone, which is why he's been so aggressive in pushing for accountability. Nick Ada, who's a culture and branding expert, has been saying the royal family needs to build their brand around William and Kate, who are seen as untouchable right now with no scandals attached to them, and position them as the future, which makes strategic sense if you're trying to salvage the institution's reputation. Paul Burrell made another really important point when he said that if it comes down to choosing between King Charles himself and the monarchy, it has to be the monarchy, suggesting that Charles should potentially consider abdication to make way for William, if that's what it takes to save the institution. Now experts say that's pretty unlikely given that Charles's mother, Queen Elizabeth, dedicated her entire life to duty, and he's probably going to follow that example. But the fact that it's even being discussed publicly shows you how serious this crisis is. People are genuinely questioning whether Charles can lead the monarchy through this storm or whether fresh leadership is needed. So where does this leave us? Well, Andrew is still under investigation with multiple police forces looking at different aspects of his conduct. The monarchy's approval rating is at historic lows. King Charles is trying to project strength while dealing with health issues and family drama. Prince William is positioning himself as the future with Princess Kate by his side. And the British public is watching all of this unfold with a mixture of fascination and concern, wondering if this is the beginning of the end for the monarchy, or if somehow they'll manage to survive this crisis like they've survived so many others. And honestly, I think the next few months are going to be absolutely crucial, because the royal family is at a crossroads where they either modernize and adapt to 21st century expectations of transparency and accountability, or they risk becoming irrelevant relics of a bygone era that the public no longer wants to fund or support. And that's not hyperbole, that's just the reality of where we are right now. The question everyone's asking is whether King Charles has what it takes to navigate this crisis, whether his health will hold up under the pressure, whether Andrew will cooperate or fight back, whether William and Kate can successfully rebrand the monarchy for younger generations, and ultimately, whether the British people will decide that 1,000 years of royal tradition is worth preserving or if it's time for fundamental change. And I've got to be honest, I don't think anyone, including the people inside Buckingham Palace, knows the answer to those questions yet. But we're all about to find out together, and whatever happens, it's going to reshape British society in ways we probably can't even fully anticipate right now. Because this isn't just about one disgraced royal. This is about the future of an entire institution and what role, if any, hereditary monarchy has in modern democracy.